Hello, teaching assistants. I am grateful for the invitation to be here and for Dr. Hardy's influence in making sure that you're not just trained on the policies and on Blackboard and the ways in which we teach, but also in our students as humans and as people who, if they are not doing well, also cannot academically succeed. So my name is Elisa Liggett, and I have the greatest job. I get to be in charge of our student care and outreach team. I also oversee, which is separate, student conduct and academic integrity. So in that realm of my work, nobody who is in our office wants to be there, so it's kind of like the dentist. But it's a wonderful time because no matter which reason of those three that a student may be in our office, they are having honest and authentic conversations with us, and so it makes for a fantastic job. And I appreciate you listening to this because I know that feelings aren't always comfortable for people to talk about, and so we're going to walk through the organized, structured way that our student care team has worked on this campus for over 15 years. So by coming here, you have joined a caring community, and the reason why TAs are so critical to us is because the best eyes and ears on our students and noticing when things change and aren't doing well are the people who see them twice a week or 3 times a week. You're going to be the ones, along with folks in university housing, who see students over the course of time and notice and report and let us know when there's a concern about someone. So what are the care team goals? This is a team of people from all over campus who, once we receive a report via our online portal, everybody looks at what we know about the student. We can see about their advising, we can see if they are failing a class, had a terrible semester and something might be up. We can get references from counseling as far as recommendations, not specific of course to that student's record, but we're a multidisciplinary team that analyzes what is the best action plan for this particular student so that we can help turn around a situation before it gets to the point where they can't succeed academically. We also want to be able to address individual student behavior in an individual way. There's no cookie cutter response to a student, and so we take a look at each and every report and determine a new plan for each student. It's also a positive and productive way. When somebody outreaches to you, sometimes it's easier than finding your own way when you're having a difficult time. And again, the case-by-case approach is a commitment that we in no way would compromise, because at a large campus, we never want a student to fall through the cracks. It also reduces the risk of fragmented care. As many of us across the nation learned after the report at Virginia Tech, people knew things in different pockets, and there wasn't one central clearinghouse, so that if there was a concern, there was one place to report it. And so the avoidability of that is by having a central care team. Who are the members? These are the fantastic folks who come every single week and look at every single report. And as you can see, many of them are frontline folks, people who can also consult on safety, like the police and members of our threat management team or threat assessment team, and the counseling center, who can say this might be something we need to take a closer look at, or this is a typical issue of transition. And of course, I'm blocking Mr. Rogers' people and the wise owl. We have very wise owls on the team, of course. So which behaviors within students are we talking about? They kind of come in 3 layers. So a distressed student, in many cases, has experienced behaviors that just affect themselves. So a distressed student may be under a situational stressor. So something is happening to them that's making it more difficult for them to complete the things that usually wouldn't feel so encumbered. And so you might notice that in classroom behavior. They may be asking for an extension. It's something that if we don't deal with it, it may get worse, but in many cases, there are some options at that point. You can report a student to the care team, and we're going to do everything that we can. Or if you're comfortable letting that student know that you're concerned, noticing these specific types of behaviors is critical. You can address it, or you can let the care team know. Second is the disturbing, and so that's when I think other people notice, and it might affect other people. It might affect other people in the classroom. It might affect a roommate. So it becomes a little bit more noticeable. I think that in many psychological circles, this is kind of when somebody starts to bleed out. So other people can look at them and make a determination that things aren't going well. Absolutely report these students to the care team. We want to notice when a student isn't doing well. And sometimes people like to have that threshold. We are never going to get a report and say, this is such an overreaction. We want people to notice, report, and then we're going to help in any way that we can. Third is dysregulated. These students we need to try to kind of contain as quickly as possible because things can get worse pretty quickly with a dysregulated student. So if you start to see, if you see, not start, you don't start to see anything, you see it. If you see these types of behaviors, this may be either a 911 call, and if you are on campus, you're going to get the police talk. I don't have to tell you that. But if you feel like you need assistance, do not ever hesitate to call for our police. They are wonderfully trained also on the care team and making referrals to the care team, which they regularly do. So if you need to contain the situation, feel free to do that, or to give us a call when this happens if you're feeling in any way like it's escalating quickly. Other things to look for. How do we identify these students? The most important thing for our campus to know is how to identify a student of concern and how to refer them. So that's why we spent a lot of time at the beginning of this presentation on how to identify. These are other characteristics that you want to take a look at. And this is why it's helpful to have TAs, because sometimes students start in August bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're in class and they're participating and they're into it, and then you start to see a decline. That's where our TAs come in so handy, and they start missing class. When students who started off engaged don't turn in a midterm, something is very wrong and we become very concerned. Now, being in COVID, this is going to be huge. The likelihood of disengagement and feeling disconnected when so many courses are online is palatable. So what we're hoping is that our instructors or our TAs, if you don't have an instructor who's go get them, let's save everyone, which of course we think is the norm, who hasn't logged in the first 3 days? Send a little note to that person. Hey, are you having any trouble with the technology? What's going on? Because we're worried about you. We want to make sure you're doing good. Who failed the first exam? If we can reach those students, try to get them back. What's going on? We know that the anxiety level of students coming in is going to be higher than ever because COVID is very stressful. It doesn't let students feel hopeful. They don't understand the future. All the things that lead to anxiety are the things that our students are experiencing right now and will have experienced for 6 months prior to entering your classroom, whether it is an online classroom or a physical classroom. So in addition to these, we're going to see that stress and anxiety. What else can you do in a classroom to reduce that? Make sure your syllabus is clear. Talk about anxiety openly. Talk about the fact that this is a different semester than any you had in college because the anxiety is very different. If there's a lot of changing around of expectations and what's in the syllabus, students who are already anxious are going to be sent into overdrive potentially. We experience anxiety and stress in very different ways, but if there are ways to limit that and contain it and mitigate it, please talk to your students about what they need, and you as the TA may be the person that they can reach out to say, I don't understand. People are very intimidated by instructors and professors, but if you name yourself as the person they can come to, they are more likely to reach out when they have a need or are not understanding what to do. And what we don't want students to do is feel that frustration and anxiety, and then that leads to giving up, when if they had just reached out and asked you one question, we could have solved it. Now, all of that seriousness and likelihood aside, you're going to have some students who are just different. They may love things that other people don't. They may look different than the rest of our students, and that's normal. Usually when we're looking at a care team referral, it is a conglomeration of things. So they might like live action role play and also suddenly took a dip. All of a sudden their hygiene changed. They were crying in class, and when you asked how they were doing, they're like, this is the lowest point. So please know we're going to have some students at a large public university that are the richness of diversity, richness of differences, challenge us to go, these are my scholars. Those are the ones that we sometimes love the most in our class. So I hope that you have plenty. What does the scope of the team look like? 563 referrals last year, and many of them did not have to have anything that was required. It wasn't so serious that it was potentially a threat to themselves or others. In most cases, we reach out to them and say, we're worried about you, how are you doing? Somebody cared enough to make a report to make sure that somebody followed up with you. And so when we look at the overall basic types of behaviors, it's a pretty wide title to say concerning behaviors. But academic concerns, high on that list. Academic concerns might mean a student's disinterested. That's all it is. It might mean they don't understand the technology, or it might mean something's really gone wrong. Emotional distress, of course, our highest one. We want to intervene anytime that there is a self-injurious statement or behavior. And of course, if it's an emergency, refer straight to the counseling center or to the police, and then we'll help out afterward to make sure that that student gets all of the services that we possibly can. And in top 5 reporters, you see that faculty are number 2, which is phenomenal because people, and you're considered faculty, people in the classroom have the ability to notice. It's going to be harder when we can't see our students. That's why we have to kind of use those back-end methodologies to figure out who's disengaging and who's not succeeding early on so that we can try to win them back. How to talk to students of concern. You might look at this and go, oh, heck no. I am in the fields that, if I can make a totally blanket unfair statement, are like sciencey or math or engineering. We don't talk about feelings. We talk about differential equations. I totally get it. I can't talk about differential equations. But if you're in social sciences or somewhere else that you're like, I could say these things to a student, we're going to look at what types of statements kind of correlate which of these types of phases, with of course red being the most serious. So quickly, we're going to do a little application, but you don't have to do anything in a chat box. If you saw this, because many reports come from things people notice on social media, think of 3 things this might mean the student is experiencing. This is very close to an actual one. Of course, we wouldn't put any personally identifiable information, but as a relief, she had won something and posted it, and no one in her family had responded with congratulations or the attention that would have been requisite to her accomplishment. So thank goodness it was a low-level concern once we called her to make sure that she was okay. But this could mean anything. Those of you who said she might be a threat to herself, it can be anywhere in between. You're absolutely right. And so in many cases, it's cryptic. And we pick up the phone and say, we're worried about you. What did you mean by, I feel like I should just die already? We want to be sure that students know the power of their language, and that if they feel like this is their lowest point, we can intervene very, very quickly. You also joined a campus that has a phenomenal counseling group and police department. How to talk to those students? As we said, in those phases, it depends. Usually it starts with, it all is encapsulated except the 911. I'm worried about you. I have noticed this change. Have you considered counseling? If those are your 3 go-tos in addition to what you're reading, that will get everything you need. And instead of using, hey, you're not doing this, we go back to our I statements. Basic stuff that makes it easier on you to remember, what are my tips on how to have a difficult conversation? So letting them know you're worried, you care, and you want to help, the core components of these conversations. This is what our student care and outreach team report looks like, sc.edu/care, and you will find this. It will ask you questions about what you saw, and then we call the student and go, somebody stopped other busy day to say, I'm worried about this student. We assure them they are not in trouble. Now, people go, I don't know if I can tell you this, or if I can attach the email the student sent to me that had the deluge of information about this is everything that's gone wrong in my life. You absolutely can. So please know that that is not part of their educational record if they have just sent you an email. If you have observed something, people get very worried about FERPA. FERPA does not cover observation and communication until it goes into a record. Once it's in a record, then we have a problem. But if it just came to you, it is not part of a record yet. So please don't worry. And if you are worried, that means you're vigilant. That's okay too. Call Lisa and say, I don't know if I can tell you this. And I'll be like, you can, or no, you can't, or heck no. 9 times out of 10 though, if you're concerned about a student's safety or their well-being, the likelihood that that is protected because you're asking in their best interest is absolutely, you're not telling me their grade, you're saying I'm worried about them. So please know that from the beginning. Delineation though, you're gonna have students who you're like, this student really needs some help. And it's just like when we have friends who have a cough and we're like, have you gone to the doctor for that yet? And they're like, no, we can't call 911 and have them picked up. People have a choice in their healthcare, and so your students do too. So please know there are some times we're going to be like, we have reached out to your student 13 times. This happened this week, 13 times, and they have blown us off. If they're not a threat to themselves or others, they do have that choice because they are grown. This is to make sure that you know you are not getting them in trouble. This is what the most serious letter for the most serious type of concern is. You are not in any trouble. People are worried about you. We want to provide caring services. Trust me, we are not going to make you look like you in any way had any maleficence, I can't think of the word, any negative intentions. So please know we're all responsible for our students. They are under extreme duress this semester. We can help them get through it. You are the eyes and ears. You're the people who care. You're the people who want to help them learn your discipline and learn how to be humans. And if we can help one student make sure that they do not fall through the cracks for something that we have a service to assist them with, we're going to do it. So my name's Elisa. Our phone number is 777-4333. All of our other information,